Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Tobacco Talk Tuesdays. My name is Caitlin Clark, and I'm the Tobacco Treatment Specialist out of the Ypsilanti office here at Unified. Today, I'm going to be doing a frequently asked questions style live stream about e-cigarettes and vaping. Just some general kind of housekeeping stuff before I get started. Contact information for tobacco services can be found on our website. You can also reach out to your case manager if you're a current client of Unified for more information. Questions can be put in the comments at any time during the stream, and I'll get to them as soon as possible. Also, please check out the comments below to find additional resources and information that I'll be referencing throughout today's live stream. A general reminder for e-cigarettes and vaping, this is kind of the new to do on the tobacco market. So there's a lot of information and research being done on health impacts and tobacco cessation use and all of that. So this can really kind of impact any policies or regulations. So a lot of these things can be constantly changing right now. So just keep that in mind. So to get started, an e-cigarette is an electronic device that produces an aerosol that is inhaled by the user. The aerosol is actually produced by a liquid known as e-liquid or e-juice that is heated by a metal coil within the device. And that liquid contains nicotine, but it also contains flavorings, propylene glycol, and glycerin, as well as many other chemicals. The modern e-cigarette was actually introduced in the United States market a little over a decade ago in 2007, but it was initially developed back in 2003 by a Chinese pharmacist by the name of Han Lik. So when it comes to the difference between vaping and e-cigarettes, there's not really one. They're essentially the same thing, just different names. They're both an electronic nicotine delivery system, and they might also be referred to as e-cig, vape pen, mods or pod mods, Juul, or really any other brand name. So when it comes to what these look like, pretty much anything. It really depends on the brand, the style, the generation. When they first came onto the market, they looked very much like combustible cigarettes, the only difference being that they were electronic, and they were also disposable. So you use them till the battery was done, the content was done, and then you tossed them. Kind of moving on from there, we saw an introduction of the pen style, and these were pre-filled, but they were also refillable, so they could be used multiple times by an individual. After that, we kind of saw the introduction of the tank style, and these were modifiable and also rechargeable. So this is kind of when we started to get into some more issues. So the design actually allowed for stronger delivery of nicotine, big issue there. And the modifiable design also allowed for use with other substances because users could actually open these up and put other things into the devices. If we look kind of now at the market, some popular designs and styles are starting to look like USBs, lighters, highlighters, kind of like the little egg-looking highlighters. And I've also seen ones that have been designed to look like inhalers. So pretty much anything is what these can look like. So people use e-cigarettes and vapes for various reasons. For adults, a lot of commonly cited reasons would be that to aid in cessation of tobacco products. And this is because for many people, they view them as a safer or healthier alternative to combustible cigarettes. And some might also use them to get around smoke-free laws or regulations in public places. For youth, a lot of it is novelty. And this comes through a lot of influence through social media, influencers, and other celebrities. They also hold the perception of it being less harmful, and for some, they're completely unaware that these products actually do contain nicotine. Flavors is also a big reason for use, especially with youth and young people, and that's because there's about 1,000 or so different flavors or more on the market, and they're all like kind of flavored around fruits, candies, anything that might be appealing to youth. And so we're seeing some targeted marketing traditionally with these products. And actually, the tobacco industry has a long history of targeting specific populations and groups, specifically the Black community, the LGBTQ community, people living with mental health conditions, among other marginalized communities. And this has been done through visibility in ads, support and sponsorship of events, and vouchers and things like that. So with e-cigarettes and vaping, we primarily see this among youth and young adults. And this is done through the social media, youthful ads, flavors. And because of this, we've seen a growth in use of a growth of use in populations that might not have otherwise been susceptible to tobacco use. I will note that I've seen a little bit of a shift in this lately, particularly with Juul, which is a pretty common brand, and they've begun to shift their market or their marketing towards a more mature crowd and kind of basing it more around cessation rather than targeting young people. So like I said earlier, e-cigarettes were brought onto the US market back in 2007, but really we've seen major growth within the last 5 to 10 years. They are currently the most commonly used tobacco product among youth in the United States. And if we look specifically at the period between 2011 and 2015, there was a 900% increase in use among middle school and high school students. Now, there's a little bit of a decrease for a couple years after that before, again, increasing in 2018. But in 2019, over 5 million individuals within that demographic had used an e-cigarette or a vape within the last 30 days. For adults, it's a little less. Only about 3% or so of adults have actually reported using e-cigarettes within the United States. And a lot of this growth and use specifically can be attributable to that targeted marketing. The big question everyone wants to know, everyone asks is, are e-cigarettes and vaping products useful in tobacco cessation? Now, I'll be real with you guys. I would love to say, no, don't think about them, don't look about them, or look at them, nothing like that. But the truth is we're unsure. There is more research needed. However, there is not currently enough evidence to support that they are useful in cessation. And one of the big issues, the big concerns about this is dual use. And so when I say dual use, I mean someone maybe starts using a vape pen or an e-cigarette or whatever to try and cut back on their tobacco use. But the problem is maybe they don't start cutting out cigarettes, maybe they don't quit the traditional cigarettes, or maybe they quit them for the time being. But the next thing you know, you're using each one kind of back and forth routinely. And so by doing this, you're increasing your nicotine intake, and thereby you're also increasing your dependency on nicotine, which will cause other issues down the line. I do want to throw in a reminder that e-cigarettes and vape products are not approved by the FDA for tobacco cessation. There are, however, 7 approved medications, including 5 nicotine replacement therapies, and also 2 medications, Chantix and Wellbutrin. And if you were here 2 weeks ago for our Tobacco Talk Tuesday, you know that Amber discussed these at length, and she also posted a blog discussing them a little more in depth. So definitely check that out in the comments below. The other big question that everyone wants to know is, are e-cigarettes safer than regular combustible cigarettes? And the answer is yes, but, and I want you guys to hold on to this but with me, safer does not mean safe. It's really important to remember that e-cigarettes and vapes can come with a host of other concerns and issues when it comes to someone's health. So let's talk about some of those. The big one obviously is nicotine. Nicotine is particularly harmful to the developing brain, so anyone under the age of 25 using these products. And that can lead to issues with attention, learning, mood, and impulse control. And while there are less harmful chemicals in e-cigarettes when compared with combustible, there are also still harmful chemicals in these products, including cancer-causing chemicals. And that's something to be aware of. One chemical in particular that's an issue is diacetyl, which is common in flavoring, and the inhalation of it is actually linked with serious lung disease. Kind of continuing on down with the lung harms, inhalation of ultrafine particles and heavy metals such as nickel, tin, and lead, also not good for the lungs, not something we want to be putting consistently into our lungs each day. I talked a little bit about dual use, so in addition to dual use, something that could be a concern is actually using these products might make you more susceptible to using combustible products down the line. So especially for people who were not previously at risk for ever smoking. And this opens you up to a whole host of combustible cigarette health issues. Another issue would be potential for unintentional injury. And one of the ways this can combat are defective batteries, which have been known to cause fires and explosions. There's also issues with the e-liquid itself actually being poisonous if ingested. So if someone who doesn't know that gets their hands on it, actually takes a drink of it, there's going to be issues there. Secondhand smoke or exposure and risk of EVALI are also of concern. You can actually find more information or more in-depth information about all of this on the CDC and also the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, and I've linked both those in the comments below. Now, technically, you cannot get secondhand smoke from an e-cigarette. It's not a combustible product. There's no fire, there's no smoke, therefore no secondhand smoke. However, you can be at risk and put others at risk for secondhand exposure to those harmful chemicals because of the aerosol, because of the exhalation, all of that. So EVALI actually stands for e-cigarette or vaping product use associated lung injury. And we really saw a lot of this a little under a year ago with outbreaks in the late summer and early fall of 2019. It was national news. There was a big to-do. Everyone had a huge panic about it. And what I found is that some major contributors of that are thought to be vitamin E acetate and THC products that were in these vaping devices. But there are potential for other chemical contributors. That's still being researched. They're still kind of trying to figure out what's going on. Now, luckily, a lot of these cases have decreased since those initial major outbreaks, but this doesn't eliminate risk or concern, and it's still something we need to have in the back of our minds when we're discussing these products. I will again be honest with you guys. This question I put in purely for me. It's something that I haven't necessarily been asked by any clients or really anyone kind of in my general life, but it's something I've seen come up on social media or research, just kind of browsing these things. So aren't anti-e-cigarette and vaping rules actually just helping big tobacco? The answer is no. This is a huge misconception. Major tobacco companies actually have huge stakes within this market. And if you look at companies like Altria, British American Tobacco, and Philip Morris International, they all are involved in the vaping industry. Altria owns part of Juul, which is actually the largest e-cigarette and vaping company in the market. Philip Morris International has IQOS, and British American Tobacco has Booze. So actually, if you look at it, pretty much the majority of the major multinational tobacco companies have been in the vaping industry since 2013, which was kind of the peak of e-cigarette growth in the United States. Are e-cigarettes regulated? So again, just want to remind everyone this can kind of be ever-changing because of where we're at with research and learning new things and all of that. At the federal level, the FDA began recognizing e-cigarettes as a tobacco product back in 2016. And so this basically set up the fact that you can't sell to underage people. It also prohibited free samples of these products, which is good. If we're looking a little more locally at the state level, we have two laws in Michigan that deal with e-cigarettes. The first defines liquid nicotine and liquid nicotine container. It also sets up minimum safety standards for these devices, and it also says that these devices must be stored in a locked case or behind the counter in shops. The second defines e-cigarettes separately from tobacco products. It also prohibits the sale of these products to minors and prohibits the possession and use by minors. There have been talks of flavor bans. There have been flavor bans attempted and enacted in multiple states throughout the country, including Michigan, but oftentimes they aren't strong enough. And one of the major issues is that they don't address mint and menthol flavors, which are still flavors that youth and young adults might be interested in using. And kind of looking to wrap things up here, if the majority of use is in youth and young adults, why should I be concerned if I'm an older adult? My general kind of and slightly hippie public health answer is I really think that anytime there's an issue when it comes to public health or a corporation is targeting a group's health for the sake of their own profit, we should care and we should do what we can to protect them and support them. My other more specific answer is that there has been a shift in marketing and the target of that marketing. Specifically, what we've seen with Juul is they're targeting it as, or marketing it now as a cessation aid specifically, and targeting an older population. They're not just looking at the 15, 16, 17-year-olds. They're looking at 30, 40, 50 plus. And so maybe they haven't targeted your age group in the past, but they're starting to move that way. The bottom line is e-cigarettes are not safe for youth, young adults, and pregnant women, as well as adults who do not currently use tobacco products, and that's straight off the CDC. There are other quit assistance tools that have been shown to work and are approved for tobacco cessation. So we talked a little bit about the pharmacotherapy and how that can be beneficial. There's also the Michigan Quitline, which is available to everyone within the state. And there are things like tobacco cessation counseling. So here at Unified, we obviously have 2 on staff. We also have groups, things like that. So many other ways that you can help yourself quit these products without the use of these e-cigarettes and vaping products. I do want to remind everyone that if you have any questions, now is the time to throw them in the comments below, and I'll get to them before I wrap things up and sign off. I want to remind everyone that down in the comments, there are some resources and additional links, so you can always check those out as well. Tobacco Talk Tuesdays will continue every other Tuesday at 2 p.m. here on Facebook and YouTube. And if you have any ideas or anything or any topics that you'd like to see in the future, whether it be here on a live stream or on the blog, please drop it in the comments and we'll get to it as soon as we can. Other than that, thank you all for joining today, and we'll see you next time.